Oysters with a pint of stout, why you have to kick the wall, and a 15-course tasting menu with whiskey pairings. This week, we're in Galway, Ireland.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies, because the best part of any trip is what you eat. And this week, we're on the west coast of the Emerald Isle and Galway. Sheena Dignam is from Galway Food Tours and galwayfoodtours.ie, and she's had a super interesting life. Growing up in the Loire Valley of France, she moved to Dublin, where she ran a chocolate shop before making her way to the exciting town of Galway. Sheena tells me about what makes her city special, including an oyster festival, a beer called Galway Hooker, and a fish called Sweaty Betty. Plus, tons of pub recommendations and lots of laughs, and I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Sheena from Galway Food Tours, welcome to Destination Eat Drink. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Brent, for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
You know, Dublin gets all the ink, but I love Galway, and it's definitely worth a trip when you come to Ireland. Why don't you wave the flag a little bit for Galway and tell folks what's special about it?
Absolutely. I'd be so happy to do that. Galway is kind of the gateway between the Burren down in County Clare and Connemara up north, only an hour each between Galway and the Connemara and Galway and County Clare. And, it's just one of those hives of activity and cultural activity, I must say, where you've got great food, great drink, beautiful streetscapes with live music. You've got right beside the sea, overlooking the mountains. And then, you've just got this great, culture connection with great theatre. We've got festivals that start from the month of March all the way to the end of October, and it's just a hive of activity and cultureness and and great food and drink. So that's why I decided to move to Galway 11 years ago.
Where were you from originally, Sheena?
So I grew up in France in the Loire Valley, and I fell in love with food there, and I was living in Dublin, and I was running a chocolate shop, and I just thought I was getting too old for Dublin, I mean, it's a young, vibrant city, but I really felt a connection to Galway, to the west, that wildness.
But surely you don't have a French accent.
Donc, je parle français, oui.
Okay. I wasn't saying you don't speak French. I was just saying you don't have a French accent when I'm speaking.
No, I have a Galway accent. I don't know if you know, like Tommy Tiernan. My sister says I sound like that comedian Tommy Tiernan now that I've been living. He's a very famous Irish comedian, but he's from the West, and she says I sound exactly like him. So I suppose I do have that now, Western accent.
You mentioned how great the food is in Galway, and I think if people know anything about Galway, they know about the oysters. What makes the local oysters in Galway so special?
Galway being on the Wild Atlantic Way, that rugged coastline, there are so many natural beds for oysters to grow. I don't know if you know, but you need a perfect amount of river water and seawater in order for them to grow, and they grow beautifully along here. We have a lot of Pacific oysters that are eaten all year round. Very nice, quite salty, and quite a lot of meat in it. But then from the month of September to the end of December, that's when we have the return of our native oysters, which are a flat shell oyster. And those are the bomb. They are so good, really creamy, very nutty. I just live for September when it comes back, and then we have this oyster festival. That's this year we took it to the streets where there's great live music and oysters. With sorbet oysters, hot oysters. Oysters, whatever way you were thinking, you can have them. And it's just such a great celebration. And to celebrate these wonderful beauties, native oysters.
Oyster Festival sounds like fun. What's your favorite way to have oysters? What's your favorite preparation method?
Just as they are. I just really love the taste, and I love to chew them, and I love the native oyster. It just keeps on giving. It keeps on, you taste it, and then maybe 2 minutes later, you still have that lovely nuttiness at the back. I just love that, you know. I don't think you need anything else. Now, I wouldn't say no to a pint of the black stuff as well beside it, but that's
I was just going to ask you, what would you pair it with? So you're going to have a Guinness with it?
Yeah. We have really nice local stouts as well that that I would recommend having with it as well. So yeah, or you know, a glass of wine. I'm not going to say no either, but we don't grow grapes in Ireland. Well, there's one guy who's making that experiment, and he does a good job of it, but you know, not white wine anyway for the moment. Maybe with climate change.
Yeah, I was talking to Granier Lawler from Dublin, and she was saying, you know, because of climate change, that, you know, folks are starting to experiment. And my reaction was, you know, within a generation or two, it's undoubtedly going to happen in Ireland that they're going to start growing successfully wine grapes. I may not be around to see it, but you certainly will. It's happening. It's going to happen.
It's happening.
It's migrating north, and you know, for all the bad parts of climate change, and there are innumerable amounts of that.
Opportunity.
There is exactly. There is opportunity.
Like, yeah, if you look at Kent and, you know, what they're growing, and like people from the Champagne region investing heavily in southern UK, you know, it's like, wow, you know, you can see if they're investing, there's something happening here, you know. And their champagnes are, well, they're not champagnes because they're not made from that area, but their sparkling wines are beautiful. Really, really nice.
Let's dive into the beer, because you mentioned the black stuff. And when you say that, I immediately think of Guinness. But, you know, Guinness is, maybe it's ubiquitous, but it's not the only choice. I think of, like, when I go to Cork, I'm not necessarily drinking Guinness. There's other beers to drink. And when I was in Galway, I had some Guinness, but I had some other stuff too. Tell me, what are your favorite beers besides Guinness? Your maybe stouts, maybe other kinds that you enjoy when we were in Galway.
Well, you know, you've got, I suppose, there are very different types of beers. Like Cork would take it very seriously, as you said, with the Beamish and the Murphys, you know.
Yes.
And Galway, we have two main breweries that are really interesting. One is called Galway Hooker. Galway Hooker, by the way,
it's a funny term for us, because you know, hooker has a different meaning in English.
Yeah, totally.
In American English.
That and crack, you know. I mean, those two things you have to explain off the bat, you know.
Crack can mean a lot of different things in American English, but
exactly,
that's good stuff.
So basically, you know, that's the emblem of Galway, is those beautiful boats. They've got a black base, 3 red sails, and they were used for fishing a lot. So that's why this brewery decided to call their beer Galway Hooker, which they actually make really nice IPAs. They make nice reds, and they make kind of session ales as well. Then you also have the guys, you have Soul Water, which are like gypsy brewers. Now, those are the ones we would have on our tours, where they have one beer called Bulletproof, which is an IPA, and also Stout, which is called Kojak. And that's kind of like, you know, it's got a really nice kind of like coffee taste to it, a little bit stronger coffee taste than what would be a normal Guinness, let's say, put in perspective, a little bit more on the heavier side. And then you also have the guys from Galway Bay Brewery. They're quite big now all over Ireland, and they have probably 20 different types of beers that they range from lagers, pills to stouts, and doing really interesting things. And it's great to see that evolution of, I suppose, they started out in this distillery, a brewery, which is now a distillery out in Salt Hill, and they are now they're still brewing in Galway, but they have opened a chain of pubs, you know, that are serving their beers, etc. Kind of like the English model, I suppose, of types of, you know, breweries where, you know, the pubs kind of are adjacent to the breweries, and that's how they sell their beers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and now we have Mickle, a distillery, which is nestled in that brewery now, and they do wonderful poutine. I don't know if you tried poutine before, Brent, haven't you?
I don't think so.
Poutine in Irish means little pot, so it's actually the foundation. It's non-aged whiskey, if you will. So it was our version of your moonshine. So Yes. And it's really nice to see these guys, sixth generation poutine makers, two brothers, that are reviving their great grandfather's recipe, using plants that are indigenous from Connemara. And, because we weren't allowed to sell poutine for so many years that it only became legal in the 90s that you're able to sell it off the shelf. So just reviving that whole side of the distilling process is really interesting. It's really nice to see the transformation from brewery to the distillery there as well.
So cool. And I'm always happy when I go to Ireland to see this new interest in different kinds of beers and craft beers and whatnot. When you're out and about and you're not heading a tour, where's your favorite place to go and grab a pint?
It's kind of like asking to choose your favorite child. Like, if you have a favorite child, I don't. Like, obviously I kind of do follow the places where they serve good Guinness, and you've been to Ireland, there's so many different types of Guinness. I think flavor profile wise, you can have a really bad Guinness, therefore you're not going to go to that pub, or a good Guinness where the creaminess, is just there. There's no bubbles. You can kind of like put your glass to 40 angle degree, and the head of the beer won't go over, and just the flavor profile. So there's a lot of places in Galway that have great Guinness, and have a great ambiance. I must say MP Walsh's is really nice. That would be a place that I would recommend. It's like this old, it used to be an old post office, and now it's this lovely place where all the locals go. Everybody knows each other. It's really nice. Knockton's as well is a really good place, full of history. It's still in the same family since 1894 as a pub. But before that, it was home to the Martin family, one of the 14 tribes of Galway who used to own that house back in the 1600s. So you can imagine that place is just etched and filled with history. And it's got a great snug. Snug is a beautiful room that's annexed to the bar. And it's very, indigenous to Ireland. If you get a snug and you sit there and just drinking good pints, you could spend the whole night there easily. And where else would I say? Like, for good new selections of beers and always like having rotating taps, I would say Beer House would be also really good for a pint, and they have the really indulgent Irish cheese toasties. Like, they always change their cheeses because we've got so many great Irish cheeses as well in those toasties. And then also the Crane. I go to the Crane, old man pub, no frills, good pint of Guinness, and the music sessions are just off the charts. It's one of those places where you could have maybe 2 musicians rock up, or you could have 25 on the night, and it just makes for just a great atmosphere and just authentic atmosphere, I suppose.
I asked you for one recommendation and you give 20. It's so typically Irish, and I just love it. I love it, Sheena. It's so great. And thank you for mentioning the snugs, because I've just been on a snug jag since we were last in Ireland this past summer. And I got turned on to the snugs because, like I've said before, we would always just go to the bar, because for me, the bar is so great because you strike up these conversations with strangers. But the snugs are so cool because you get this little intimacy there that you can't get when you're in public at the bar, and people are coming at you and everything. And if you just want a quiet, intimate evening with your partner or with your friends, you go into the snug and you've got, it feels like you're in your own private little living room. I love the snugs. They're so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're part of that crazy atmosphere out there, but you still got that quietness removed. It's really nice. Yeah, I agree.
If you're enjoying this episode, take a moment to rate and review Destination Eat Drink on your podcast app. It just takes a moment, and it helps other foodie travelers just like you find the show. And thank you very much. So you mentioned the fact that the beer brewers and the distillers are kind of coming together. They're doing both things now. And we got turned on to some really good whiskey when we did your food tour a few years ago. Tell us a little bit about your whiskey tour experience. What's that like? It's focused on whiskey, obviously, but what would we do when we book this?
So the whiskey tour, first of all, the places that we would visit, we tried to give you a diversity of different types of pubs. You have the really old pubs that are, just so beautiful in their brut stages, as I said, like the Crane, no frills. And then you have the bigger bars, you know, that would have like great beer gardens and like trad music. And then you have like places that are just, you know, really, they have, you know, over 500 bottles of whiskey on their shelves, and you just like, you know, that's what they do. So we try and do different neighborhoods as well, so you can get to see the different sides of Galway. And obviously we're celebrating the distillation of Irish whiskey, but we really want to tap into its history, its journey, because it is quite interesting on how, you know, we had over 200 small distilleries in the 1600s to go to only having two in the 1980s. So, you know, you have that huge decline, that story behind of why we came, you know, where we are now. We have 48 distilleries in Ireland. And, you know, there is a small decline now in the industry as well. Like I know Middleton have stopped their expansion on their distillery down in Cork. But, you know, that's part of the journey of Irish whiskey, you know, and I think it's really interesting to talk about that. And also now with the revival of new distilleries, you've got such a different, you know, portfolio to taste. If you were to come to Ireland 25 years ago, we'd be serving you just Paddy's, Powers, Jameson, you know, and that would be kind of your basics. Now you have, I'm not even going to attempt to say how many different types of whiskey you have in Ireland now today. There's so many. But I know that there's really small micro distilleries that are doing some really interesting stuff on how they age it, if they smoke it now a little bit, you know, and it just creates a great taste portfolio. So basically what you do in each pub, you get to try 3 different small tastings of whiskey. We try and touch on, we have 2 distilleries in Galway, which is the Ashgra, a new distillery, and Mickle. So definitely those would feature. And then we try and, you know, get more smoky, sweet, you know, depending on what it's been aged in the cask, just so as you can see the diversity. You know, I did a 15-course tasting menu with whiskey pairings.
Oh my God.
And obviously I can't remember anything over course 12.
Yeah, I'm like, did they have to wheel you out of there, Sheena?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't seen for days. No, but I was really blown away about how food also can pair with whiskey, you know, and I think, you know, we get people to try different types of cheeses and meats with our whiskeys, you know, and it works, you know. Obviously it's a sipping thing, like really have to take it easy, but it's a really interesting flavor profile to have on tour.
Yeah, so this is a great way of experiencing a lot of different whiskeys, because I'm from Chicago, and Chicago's known as a shot in a beer town, which means you get a beer and then you get a shot on the side, and, you know, you just, and down it goes. But you're not trying, first of all, it's usually rot gut. And second of all, you're not trying a variety. Would this be typical? Could we, as a tourist, as a visitor, go into a bar and say, well, I'd like to taste 3 different ones, or I'd like to taste 4 different ones. Can you set me up and I can kind of see the different flavor profiles that I might enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some great bars that do those kind of flights, if you will, of different whiskeys. And they try and, so if you want to try whiskeys from the Wild Atlantic Way, you know, you can make your way from Cork up to, you know, Sligo, all along there. They'd have different types of whiskeys that they do 4 different ones. And I think that's really interesting. And you get the talk, and they would talk you through it. So you don't have to move from place to place. However, I do recommend a little bit of a walk to help you with the tasting. But there's some bars like O'Connell's do that. O'Connell's on Eyre Square. Where else? Taylor's in the West End do it as well. Yeah, there's a few spots. Yeah. But yeah, definitely. And even just talking to the bartenders, you know, if you just want to strike up that conversation, you know, I think, you know, pubs is something so beautiful and friendly, you know, that you can go in on an afternoon and have a chat with the bartender, and he will be able to talk you through the, you know, what he should be what he can recommend, and depending on what you want to taste.
The best resource is bartenders, not only for what bars to go to, but restaurants too. These guys are in the hospitality and food business, so they know, you know, because they're talking to these people. So great tip on that, Sheena.
Yeah.
We kind of gave a short shift to the food. We talked about oysters, but I'm wondering, is there another signature dish or something that we should try definitely when we come to Galway?
There's not a dish per se, but I will say we have phenomenal ingredients that make the dish, So, if we have beautiful wild lamb in Connemara. Trying air dried lamb is a new one that I never discovered before in my travels, So that air dried lamb is hung for 6 months and then, smoked for 24 hours, and just the flavor profile is just unbelievable. We have wonderful cheeses. We have like 5 different cheese producers just in Galway alone in the area. And we have the oysters, obviously, wonderful smoked salmons, mackerel. Sweaty Betty is a lovely fish as well that's local to here, which is, Sweaty Betty, yeah. It always makes everyone laugh. It's a white fish. It's kind of like, and it is quite sweaty, it would be used a lot in like the fish stews and stuff like that. But a few people like Jess and Kai, she's made really nice dishes, with the Madras curry and stuff like that in that before. And, I think, Galway is a melting pot of different flavors. If I touch on, Yoshimi who makes her sushi, came over like 25 years ago, couldn't understand why we didn't eat fish as Irish people, why we were cooking it so much, and, simple reason is obviously our Catholic religion, you have to eat fish on a Friday and, the fish was so tough and there was no love in that preparation, so you have generations of people, oh, I don't like fish, and that's also an education in itself. But she wants to show what you could do with fish. And, she really, after a few disastrous years trying to set up on the market in Galway, she now has her own restaurant. She keeps on winning these awards, like national awards, and showcasing the best of Irish, fish, seafood, etc. And,
Amazing.
Galway, we've moved on so much, in our palate, of just having food for the sake of eating, that you have to eat, right, to sustain, to survive, to actually enjoying your food and talking about textures and talking about provenance. And, it's a different scene from when I moved over to France in the 80s, and just like my head was blown off me, because we never talked about food, and that was the opposite then in France,
Yeah, it's funny. Everyone asks, like, why was fish not a staple of Irish cuisine? You're an island, but it never was. And it's really a great story that a woman comes from the outside and kind of schools the Irish on how to properly prepare fish. And now you guys are loving it. I think that's an amazing story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's great. I think it's something that, we need to be shouting about more in Ireland, as to how great our food is. We have, from our dairy, our fish, our beef, our, everything that we have. Now, obviously I'm biased. I'm Irish. I'm so proud of what we have, but I think, people are blown away when they come to Ireland because it's not what they're expecting, and, so I love people walking away and said, Jesus, I had no idea that they were doing that in Ireland, and that kind of level, that just really makes me, never cease to give me goosebumps, Brett, if I'm being perfectly honest.
It's true. It's true, though. I mean, people have this expectation of the beautiful landscapes and the greenery and the wonderful time that you'll have in the pubs and the super friendly people. That's all well known. What's lesser known is how great the food is, if you know where to look for it. And the way to do that is like on a food tour with you guys. We had also some great pastries and sweets when we did your food tour. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think also people coming to, like, first of all, our butter is just unreal. So obviously that's going to be a good container to make great pastries. And then using, the local, we use honey from the burn. There's a place that we go to, a pastry shop, where they use the 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 Burn is a place, and for everyone who doesn't know, is right beside kind of Galway. It's right beside the Cliffs of Moher. The fall on the flora that grows there is quite unique, and there's not that much honey that comes from it. But when you do taste it, it's just like eating a flower almost. It's so beautiful, and that is in the chocolates that a local French pastry chef makes. We have, like, of course, our staples of like rhubarb pies and apple pies, which are beautiful. Our brown bread and our soda breads are quite important too, and a reference that you'll find on all dishes pretty much all over Ireland. But I must say, like, I went to Magpie the other day, which is a new bakery. I don't know if you've tried it yet.
No.
The queues are insane. It's out the door, and, with good reason. Like, I just went in and I had, and I'm still thinking about it, and it was last Wednesday I had it. It's honey bread, right? Simple. But he makes his own breads, obviously, kind of like a sliced pan, really thick. He used the honey from the Burn, like so flourful, and then amazing amount of butter that gives that nice crunch. Wow, it was just so beautiful. Sometimes it's just the simple things in life, right? That, it doesn't have to be, over the top with like foams and, I don't know, all these like colors. It's the simple stuff, I think, is sometimes just the most beautiful.
Well, it's not going to travel, so I'm going to have to come there immediately and get some. Otherwise, I'd ask you to drop me a slice in the toast, drop a slice in the post.
Yeah, I don't know if it's bacon.
But I don't think it's going to make it. And knowing Portugal, it'll get hung up in customs anyway. So, yeah, it's notorious here. People are like, "Can I send?"
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Can I send you something? I'm like, please don't. What you're sending me is a problem. For more food and travel, check out destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a new video from Antibes in France. There's a great market there where we pick up some awesome spices, some amazing Lebanese food to sample, and a museum dedicated to one of the 20th century's greatest artists. You can see that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. I also posted a new story on the site. It's about the Pope who didn't want to be Pope. And spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. Read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I've also got a couple new food and travel ebooks available from the mountains of Abruzzo, Italy, like L'Aquila, a city that survived a devastating earthquake and is fighting back with a great spirit and some amazing food. And there's also Scano and Sulmona. Sulmona is where they make confetti, the famous almond with candy covering. It's two great towns, Scano and Sulmona, in one ebook, and they're all available at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. After we finish our tour with you, Sheena, what else should we be sure to see in Galway? Are there any can't miss things when we're visiting your city?
We have, so I definitely would go to Salt Hill, have a walk along the prom,
it's beautiful.
Kick the wall,
Yeah, it's nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah. You can kind of see the Cliffs of Moher kind of like on the left hand side as you're walking, which is really, really nice. Then you kick the wall, which is, if you do go to the prom, you have to make sure to go all the way to the end, because if you don't kick that wall, that's bad luck, So even though you might not feel like a 3-kilometer walk, you have to do it. And then also, the cathedral is beautiful. It's we have St. Nicholas Church, which is the oldest church in Galway. And then that was built in 1320. And then St. Nicholas, the cathedral was the most modern cathedral in Europe, which was built in the 60s. And then like walking around Eyre Square was really nice. Along the waterways, going to the university as well, is really beautiful. And then just the general atmosphere, which is something that never changes regardless of what time of year you go to Galway, is buskers on the streets, just singing that kind of energy that it gives, the bright streetscapes, beautiful colors that you have, just walking around is sometimes that's just the best thing to do, and just on those pedestrian streets, very beautiful.
Well, Sheena from Galway Food Tours, folks can book a tour with you at galwayfoodtours.ie, and they should do it. I can say from firsthand experience, I've been on the tour. I've been on one of your tours at least, and we had a great time. You turned me on to some whiskeys and some beers that I would have not otherwise known about. Thank you for a great tour, and thank you so much for being on the show today. We've had some laughs, and it's been entertaining, but it's also been very interesting, and you've shared a lot of knowledge with us. So, Sheena from Galway Food Tours, thank you so much. Great conversation today.
Brent, thank you.
Okay, that's Sheena from Galway Food Tours. Book a tour at galwayfoodtours.ie. Time and money well spent. And if you want to hear more of my conversation with Sheena, become a member of my Substack. Members get access to full interviews, including Sheena telling me about the famous Claddagh rings and the great story behind them. Plus, celebrating Halloween in Galway with a little jig. Become a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in South Carolina for a Southern breakfast, watching baseball from a rooftop bar, and mac and cheese as a vegetable? Don't miss that. Make sure you're subscribed so it downloads automatically to your phone, laptop, or tablet. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson. I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.